The Inquire Educator Summit is back for its third and largest edition yet, designed to be a festival of learning like no other. TIES 2022 features thought leaders like Dylan William, Kath Murdoch, Ron Rickard, Jim Knight, and Trevor McKenzie, and over 100 other educators across 10 plus unique session formats. Created for you to transform your practice, TIES 2022 gives educators like you opportunities to foster lifelong connections through an engaging pre-conference called Connect, learn new strategies at Learn, the main conference, and transfer learning to your classroom at Transfer, the post-conference. Head to www.toddleapp.com/ties now to get your all-access pass. As listeners of the Recess Duty podcast, you receive up to 20% off on TIES 2022 passes by using the discount code TIES 2022 RDP at checkout. So hurry and get your all-access pass today. TIES is brought to you by Toddle, an all-in-one teaching learning platform for IB and other progressive schools.
Welcome to Recess Duty, a podcast for educators to come together to share struggles, but also celebrate successes by sharing stories and ideas in a safe and supportive environment to collaborate with one another. Here's your host, Levi Allison.
Hey everyone, this is Recess Duty with your host, Levi Allison. And today we're here with Brian Host, who is a coach and a leader in innovation and using technology to spark wonder. We'll discuss their journey and experiences in education. Thank you so much for joining us, Brian. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. It's exciting days down here in Australia at the moment. We've just reintroduced all of our kindergarten in year one back to school. So face-to-face learning has kicked off again. And next week we return our year 2 through to year 11. So exciting days.
Wow. What an amazing accomplishment that is. I know everybody, especially here at Chadwick, was very excited to get our youngest learners on campus because distance learning is so much harder for them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I know it was a big challenge for many, many people, but definitely our younger learners found this really challenging. So as the students suddenly had the joy of seeing one another, it was one of those priceless moments where, there was kids that saw each other who haven't seen each other for in physical sight for 4 months now.
Wow.
There was joy everywhere.
That's amazing to hear. And I think of us here in South Korea where we've been so lucky to be able to be on campus at some point, like because we're doing hybrid. And I do think we are rather lucky to be able to see each other because we haven't had to do distance learning for 4 months at a time. I don't think in a very long time. I think since the onset of COVID. So, that's so much. I'm just good to hear that the kids are back on. So, Brian, what are you excited about at the moment?
To be honest, some of the things that I'm excited about is allowing teachers to take on many of the things that they've learned over the last 4 months of remote learning and actually start seeing them become part of their practice. A lot of teachers initially were terrified of remote learning, where conversations that I've heard numerous times over the last couple of weeks is many teachers are now on the other side going, we're feeling a little bit terrified about coming back to the classroom. We've got so used to the way things have been. So it's finding the great things from remote learning as well as the great things from face-to-face and actually doing a little bit like what you've talked about in the hybrid style of things, but blending those two together. So the transformation that happens in school, it gives richness and it becomes a unique community to be working in.
Absolutely. I've said multiple times on this podcast and asked multiple people, what is something that you would like to continue doing from learning from this experience that you would like to continue moving after COVID? Because COVID will end at some point. We don't know when, but it will. What is something that you want to continue doing? And more often than not, it's always feedback, timely feedback, questioning, parent involvement. And it's just amazing that it took a pandemic for us to really see what are the priorities and what we really do. So putting that to you, Brian, what is something that you and your teams have noticed that you guys would like to continue doing?
Well, definitely bringing that connection to family. At my previous school, that was something that I would be regularly doing, having virtual sessions, for example, grandparents who lived in the UK, reading books to younger students in my class. I would do that with other countries, have those global connections happening. My new school, that wasn't a cultural thing yet. Remote learning has actually opened up that box, so to speak. And a lot of the teachers were going, how do we connect with grandparents? How do we connect with parents? How do we bring in connections from other classrooms? So those questions they started asking, they started seeing, oh, this is achievable. This is not hard. This is something that any teacher, and I had one of my teachers who says she's not technologically minded in any way, but she said, this is great. I can do this. I feel success. And that's what you want. You want teachers walking away going, I'm successful at this. I can manage this. This is not so overwhelming that I can't do it. And that's one of the silver linings, so to speak, of the last 4 months for us here in Australia, is that we've now got teachers who feel comfortable and confident that they can use the technology that's available to them to actually empower the learning of students and bring in the broader community. Because obviously we can't have the broader community come on site. So we've got to look at ways to bring the broader community in another sense. So things like transforming the way we do our presentation days and assemblies, all of those sort of things. Looking at live streaming, we've had authors who come into the school and do live streaming. So there's so many options out there. You've just got to be willing to explore.
Absolutely. And I think, in the IB Learner Profile, risk taker is one of the attributes that we're trying to give our kids. And I think there has been no better way for us to really embody being a risk taker. Because again, I think when this pandemic happened, I think every teacher had to turn into a YouTube celebrity and turn into a graphic designer within 24 hours. And that took a lot of courage. And I think some of us found a really strong niche that we're like, oh, we're really good at this. I don't mind this. This is really working. When you get on YouTube now, there's thousands of really amazing videos, specifically because I teach music, of really amazing resources that weren't there before. Or when you get on SeeSaw and you see all these wonderful activities that are made using Canva and using Power Slides, and just amazing products that people have been able to explore, like you say, and try new things. So it's been really great.
Yes. The term pivot was very much thrown around here in Australia. I don't know whether you guys got the same thing in Asia there, but we all learned to pivot very quickly and iterate and develop those skills.
Yeah, one of my administrators, he said one of the key words is flexibility this year. We're going to be being very flexible in how we approach the learning, which honestly turned out really well. And we did some amazing stuff for our students, and it was really great. It was really awesome. So what is something, Brian, that you find as a Google expert, as a technology coach, having probably have seen a surplus in your expertise being needed because of this? What is a common myth that you've had to talk about, shine a light to, of what technology is?
Debunking the myth that every student is a digital native. That is very much a common belief. However, in reality, it's not true. Students still need that guidance, that explicit teaching, the understanding and the learning around how to use technology and then create with it. Once they have that basic understanding, yes, they will run with it, but often they need that person at the shoulder to actually guide them and go, you actually need to press that. You need to use that. This is how you actually navigate this. And a lot of students, we do it with the best intention, but a lot of students get thrown in the deep end and just have that expectation, go and write an essay, and have the expectation that they automatically know how to write the essay, where we've got to actually take a step back and go, I'm, as an expert learner, I've actually got to go through that process with the students and actually scaffold it. It's from a musician's perspective, you wouldn't just take a piece of Mozart and put it in front of a child and say, like this. You actually backward map and go, this is the end goal. This is where we want students to actually get to. Let's start backward mapping and planning out those achievement steps. And in my own case, where I actually am an inquiry-based, very much focused on inquiry-based learning, I look at the work of people like Kath Murdoch, and I actually go, this is the process that she goes through to dig deeper into inquiry. So it can be in technology, it can be in science, it can be in any area of the curriculum. And where I do oversee curriculum in my school as the coordinator of primary, I actually am intentional about how do we not just teach what the curriculum says, teach the content points, but actually allow that authentic experience so students really make those connections across those KLAs and dig deep with that.
No, absolutely. And being a little vulnerable here, I have made that mistake actually just today about expecting my students to know how to duplicate a page on SeeSaw as something as simple as duplicate, add page. I was like, oh, whoa, okay, let's rewind, pump the brakes. Let me show you how to do this real quick. Okay, now let's go. And it was a really good, like you said, it was a good lesson for me because I was just walking in there assuming they knew what to do because they've been doing distance learning for a year and a half now, or hybrid. So, but you do have some of those kids that just are not there yet, and that's okay. We got to make those little scaffolds for them. Brian, what are some challenges?
Yep.
What are some challenges for that?
I suppose challenges partly come from where we sit as a teacher. Often we come from a position of, this is how we've done things for so long. It's easy to do it this way.
Yeah.
It's easy to have every student sitting down in front of us and we explicitly teach for however period of time. However, we understand that students have they've got a time limit that they can actually sit and pay attention. Yeah. So the attention span. So we've got to look at how do we take a large concept and actually make mini lessons and even micro lessons out of that. So we can give them bite-sized bits of information which really hits the learning intention so they can go and understand what the success criteria is going to be. So they can then go, okay, I understand the crux of this. I can now be successful at that. And then you go to that next level. And it's very much growing the learning rather than just going, I'm the expert, here's the learning. You're actually doing that journey with the student and actually allowing them to explore their learning and grow their learning over time.
Wow, that was a really wonderful way of putting that. How do you have any resources off the top of your head that help your teachers or you plan those mini micro lessons to help grow your students' wonderings in learning?
Resources. There are many things that are out there. There's nothing that will perfectly do anything.
Yeah.
A lot of, like, I know the work of Trevor McKenzie and the way he scaffolds a lot of his work has been really phenomenal and influential in the way I practice. In my own classroom, when I'm teaching students, I will always backward map, so universal design. And then from that, I will draw up my success criteria, my learning intentions, but I won't leave it at that. Often that's where a lot of teachers will park it and they'll go, okay, learning intention, success criteria, tick. I then go, how can I work with students to actually make these inquiry questions? I know Kath Murdoch, that's very much one of the things that she's very focused on is if students have a question, are wondering, inquiry, they're more willing to actually sit with that for a longer period of time. But if they just know, okay, this is what I need to do, they'll quickly rush through that. And a lot of us have experienced that when we've seen kids, they've got a checklist, tick, 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 tick. But if they've got a rich question that they're interested in, they will sit with that for hours upon end to actually problem solve. So that's very much how we do it. There's no perfect solution, unfortunately. I know a lot of IB schools do it really well and actually link things together using the learner profile and the big conceptual learnings that actually go with it. But yeah, there's different ways and different strategies on getting there, but there's nothing that's perfect, unfortunately.
No, absolutely. And again, we're all on a learning journey of finding what is perfect. And then we have to come up with a definition of what is perfect, because what perfect for me in my context is going to be completely different. What is perfect for a different context.
Yeah.
So what is I guess my question is, what has changed what has changed your mind about education over your various roles, various lessons, various planning? What has changed? How can you tell me about your story?
Yeah. Well, for myself, when I was going right back, probably about a year 5 student, I was very disconnected from education. I was not interested in being at school. I was at a school, very nice, beautiful community school, fantastic resources, etc. But I was very much not engaged. I didn't want to be there. I felt completely an outsider within that system. That was until I got to year 5. When I got to year 5, I had a teacher who, rather than just trying to teach the curriculum, spent time actually getting to know me and getting to know my other cohort of students. He discovered that in my background that I was competing at a high level with gymnastics, and he also realised that I was very passionate about science. Mm-hmm. I was also very passionate about technology at that time, but I was never allowed to touch any of the school-based computers. So that was a constant protest, but that was just given to particular students. But he sort of went, okay, how can I engage Brian? So it was a Friday afternoon. It was a science afternoon. He decided to actually adorn a science robe and actually walked out into the science dressed up like a scientist. He didn't just stick it there. He actually then did a couple of cartwheels across the front of the classroom. Me sitting there as a gymnast going, okay, what's this guy doing? What's actually happening here? That was probably one of the first lessons that I fully paid attention to. And it was that starting point of me actually re-engaging with education. I ended up, by the time I moved into high school, I had 2 science teachers who were also agriculture teachers that did the very similar sort of thing. They sort of really intentionally got to know their students and walked along the path with their students. Yeah. I was blessed to actually have them guide me from year 7 through to year 12 and help get me off on the path that I'm now on. But I had to, I maneuvered in and out of education a few times, but have come back into education and into educational leadership. So I just had to wait for a lot of the education system to catch up to where my thinking was.
Mm-hmm. And as a leader, you probably have hundreds and hundreds of students that you're quote unquote in charge of. How do you build that relationship with all these individual students? I know as a specialist, I try to build relationships with entire grade levels, but you have an entire school.
I One of the ways is as much as I can in the mornings, I actually get out the car lines, kiss and drop duty. And even though I'm not rostered on, I try and get out there and actually get to know the families, the students, and actually memorize the cars or vehicles they arrive in. Same in the afternoon. I try and do the same sort of thing. I'm out with students as much as I can because, yes, you learn things about students in the classroom, but you put them on the playground, you suddenly discover who they are beyond the classroom. The classroom, you can generally see what triggers their wonderings, what triggers their desires, and gives them that sense of awe. But you put them on the playground, you actually see their personalities. And that's one of the things that I've really loved in my role is actually being able to be present with students and learn about who they are. So, it very much is it's one of the things that I know in Australia, one of our teaching professional teaching standards is our first one is know your students. And that's very much a key driver for our government. But it's beyond the government. It's very much innate in me. I want my students to know they are known.
I'm sitting here nodding my head because I can't possibly agree more with what you're saying of knowing those students, knowing that they are seen and that they belong. And thank you for bringing up playgrounds and recess, because that's a great segue to why I named this podcast as Recess Duty. You know, one of my favorite things to do is get outside and playing recess. I remember playing soccer with students who never thought I could play soccer. I don't play soccer well, but I definitely can kick a ball. And they thought that was really cool, which made me a little bit more connected with them. Or playing hacky sack with the kids in Kuwait and just realizing, oh, Mr. Levi doesn't only play piano. He's not only the music teacher, but he's an actual individual that cares and wants to get to know us. And I think that is something that when we move on, that we really need to continue to do, because I do think it's incredibly powerful. So, Brian, where can people find you to connect with you if they want to continue learning with you?
Twitter's probably the best place that I spend a lot of the time working with people. So Host Brian, @HostBrian is my Twitter handle. However, I do use things like Instagram and also LinkedIn. Those are the two other social medias I mainly operate on. I do have a blog. It's been a while since I've updated it because I've been doing some other writings. However, if you look up brianhost.blogspot.com, that's the blogs that I do have. I try and connect as much as I can. I try and support educators from every sort of background. I actually am mentoring quite a few educators, not only just in my local area, but working with them internationally as well, because I care for education, and it's not just caring in Australia, it's caring beyond Australia that's so important.
Absolutely. And I always find it really admirable when educators are supporting other educators. And I truly believe that when we all help each other, we all get better. When we all support each other, we all get better. And what better way for us to show compassion and, camaraderie than helping not just the teacher next door, but maybe the teacher on a different continent also grow. And I think Twitter is one of the best professional learning platforms ever. I think there's great things, bad things, all the in-betweens. And I think it just makes you really think critically about what you do. And I do really appreciate what you do, Brian, on Twitter, because I have been following you for a very long time, and I'm a huge fan of your work. Brian, what do you remember from recess growing up?
From recess growing up, one of the things that I used to absolutely love is going on the monkey bars and hanging upside down on the monkey bars, starting to swing, on my knees and doing and flying off it and doing what's known as a hock swing off it.
Yeah.
I would do it quite regularly and terrify my teachers.
I bet.
And then mates of mine would do it and end up having to possibly go off in an ambulance because they quite landed as well as I did. But it's all fun.
Yeah, no, I never did that. I gotta admit, I've never done that. I've heard a lot of stories about recess, but that is not one I have done. Well, thank you, Brian, for joining this week's episode of Recess Duty. Be sure to follow us in your favorite podcast app so you don't miss our next episode. I'm Levi Allison, and have a great day of learning, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Recess Duty. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, please share this podcast with other educators so they can join the fun. And that is the end of our Recess Duty.